Alright, I'm going to go over some things about how turbochargers and the way the parts are worded so you can have a clue about what's going on, so that this way, the next time somebody says, I have a G25 660 with a 92 AR, you don't look like a, or in front of your friends feel like a complete, you get the idea. So, let's start with turbocharger. What is it, and what's the difference between a drop-in and a full frame? Well, turbocharger, the exhaust gases coming out of the engine, drive the turbine wheel, which spins the compressor wheel, which pulls air into the engine, compresses it, and makes a wonderful thing called boost pressure. Now, what the heck is G25 660 mean? Well, G25 is the actual turbine size that they choose for that particular one, and 660 is the compressor wheel rating. See, they make a G25 550, and they make a G25 660. Then you go up and make a G30 770. Now, what the heck does 92 AR mean? Well, that's the size of your turbine housing. See, this is an 80.83 or 83 housing. This is 1.01 or a 101 housing. This is larger. What does that do? Well, the larger turbine housing basically allows the exhaust gases to come in at a steeper, less shallow angle. See, in the smaller housing, we're going to come in at a shallower angle, and we're going to hit the blades, and we're going to help spool a little bit earlier and a little bit less lag, sacrificing to where when we start to really get some power into it and some RPM, it's going to get harder for the exhaust to get out. Whereas if we go with the bigger AR, we're going to end up with a little bit less spool and a little bit more lag, and it's going to make more power though. Well, didn't I just say the same thing? Am I the... No, I'm not, because they're not the same thing. See, spool and lag are two different things. And I think people really get this confused a lot. Now, spool, in a nutshell, or AKA boost threshold, is when the car you are starting, let's say you start at 2,500, 3,000, or 3,500 RPM, and the car makes 25 pounds of boost every time at 4,200 RPM, that is spool or boost threshold. Lag is, I'm shifting up, I've wound the car out to 7,200 RPM, I'm shifting, it's over 5,000 RPM, I smash the gas, how much time does it take to get back to my target boost? That is lag. So now that you know the difference, and I'm not the, and everybody else that seems to get this confused, well, I don't know what to say. Does having the bigger AR always be better? Well, I don't know. Maybe she said bigger is always better, but not always. It really depends on your goal. Sometimes we want a smaller AR. And one other thing I should mention, the bigger compressor wheel, that doesn't always mean we can use all the power that's rated, because in order to get air in, we need to get exhaust out. And we can't do that if we have the smallest turbine housing. Remember, I said that having a smaller turbine housing, yes, it's better for spool and lag, but it's not as good for power. Now, turbo selection. How am I going to choose from here? Well, I'd say the best rule of thumb is essentially 80%. 80% of what the compressor wheel is capable is what you're going to make out of the setup. That's the, I want to say, pretty much guaranteed. Now, in a super ideal setup, 90% of what the compressor wheel is rated at is what you're going to make. And a super ideal setup, and this is to the tires. I want to keep this in mind, because this turbo's rated at 660, and that's for crankshaft power. That is not really meant for power at the tires. That is not the same number. I'm going to do some quick math for you here. Now, some people are going to say these numbers are lackluster. I'm going to tell you they're legit numbers. Now, the stock Type R makes approximately around 305 horsepower. Now, NA, and there's a class for this, that proves that they make 160 horsepower without a turbo. Well, the stock turbo makes about 14.5 pounds of boost, which is 1 atmosphere or 1 bar. General rule of thumb, as 14.5 pounds of boost will double your horsepower. That does not stay true as boost pressure increases. The more boost pressure you try to jam in, the more heat you generate, the more restriction you make. So 160 NA, we're going to add another 160 for the first 14.5 pounds of boost. We're going to add another 160 horsepower, and that's 480. And then we're going to take off about 9% for losses through the drivetrain. That's 436. Making 436 horsepower on pump gas on 29 pounds of boost. Yeah, that's pretty possible. And again, this depends on your fuel too. Some fuels are better. You can make some more, 20 more, but that's pretty typical. Now, if we add ethanol, we're only going to add a maximum of around 15%. So if we add 15%, that's 501 horsepower on 29 psi of positive boost in an ideal scenario. That's pretty normal. So this is how you're going to try to figure out where I want to be power-wise, and some turbos will make a little bit more, some will make a little bit less. Some engines are just, you win the lottery. The cylinder head doesn't have what's called core shift, which is for a whole other video, because no two factory cylinder heads are created equal. I promise you that. So now that you understand this rule, the maximum I'd recommend for your power goal for the turbo is 90% of the horsepower rating of the turbo. You never want to try to make 100% of the horsepower rating of the turbo to the tire, which is a terrible idea. And the other thing I should go over that's really kind of a lost thing is what's called trim. It's just not something we use anymore because it's not too much to worry about, since we have very good compressor maps and the ability to read them. Trim is essentially the difference in size between the inducer or the small side of the compressor wheel and the exducer, the big side. Generally, when you have a larger exducer, it does good or is tailored to high boost pressures. Lots and lots of boost pressure. So Garrett is a really cool thing that may help you pick your turbo selection on their website. Is they'll even have a turbine pressure ratio chart, and they'll show you, depending on the exhaust housing size you pick, how much exhaust flow you have. And remember I said, exhaust flow, the more out, the more you get in. So the more exhaust you get out, the more you get back in. Don't go around rating though, because you see something rated at 700, go, oh, that's better than this one rated at 600. Because I can promise you, there is some of that stuff rated out there rated higher than a 25 660, and this little 660 will whoop the snot out of that turbo rated higher than this. So, and again, we'll never compare a full frame to a drop-in turbo using the same. It's literally, not kidding you, on an ideal setup for both, one of which used the entire turbo in the drop-in using the same size 25 660 and did not completely use this 660, and that little 660 still made 45 horsepower more. Same cams, same cylinder head, same injector, same ethanol, same dyno, same exhaust, same damn intercooler. You can't add any more same parts. But that just gives you an idea in the full frame versus drop-in. I'm not saying don't get a drop-in turbo. I'm just saying a full frame is always going to be better. So I really hope this helps you decide what turbocharger you want to pick. But just to make this real simple for you, if we want to do just stock motor stuff, right? I really wouldn't go too much bigger than a G25 660 or maximum of a G30 770. Here's how I'm going to kind of lay it out to you. All right, MHI stage 2. Pretty much on ethanol, guaranteed to make pretty much 500. As long as you got an exhaust that flows, you don't have some crazy back pressure or some other crazy problem. An RV6, R660, you're going to make probably with the right, as long as you have the fuel system, 530 to the tire, and you're going to get a lot more RPM, which is going to be way quicker than that little 500 seems. Spool just as good. G25 660, there's a little caveat to this. See, the G25 660 with a 72 AR, you're not going to rev it out to 7,800 RPM, because the R660 has a bigger turbine housing than a 72 AR. It's at 0.83. Whereas the G25 60 has the optional 92 AR. Now, you can definitely make 550 on this and go to 7,600 RPM, but you're going to use more fuel because we're getting more exhaust out and we're using more RPM. So there's that little caveat. So it's a little bit of a weird spot. Now, kind of the ideal, use all your fuel and the RPM, but we're going to sacrifice some extra spool. It's going to be a G3770. Now we're getting closer to spooling near 5,000 RPM and spooling, and the lag is definitely going to be increased, but we can definitely get some more RPM in it. But we're definitely going to be making more high RPM power for longer periods of time, and clearing 560 is definitely a not so hard, crazy task using the G3770 on the stock motor. But as far as for going beyond those things on the stock motor, email me at support@fktd if you want to know how to make 630 on a little G25 660, or even how to turn around and only have to put 28.5 pounds of boost in your car and make 650 to the tire. Yeah, I got it set up for that too. So thank you for tuning in. Appreciate you for watching the video. And just so you don't feel like, or look like in front of your friends, now you know how these turbos work, what these mean, what these parts are. And before I check out, don't think just because something reads a bigger turbine wheel, it's better, because there are other companies that have bigger turbine wheels, the compressor wheel ratio, but they have more blades. More blades means less space between them, and the exhaust has got to push a heavier wheel, and it's got a tighter space to get the exhaust out. So keep that in mind. Garrett's got a really good philosophy, and it just works. So thank you. And I'm not sponsored by Garrett.